Welcome back. You're still watching Inside Politics. We do apologize for the slight technical hitch just before the break. We are back. And just before we continue the conversation, top trend this morning on Twitter, hashtag Mudavadi Chagwabora. Also, Kitui is trending, and it's because of the heated or heightened political activities happening there since Friday. Remember, Raila Odinga and William Ruto are both in Ukambani, different areas campaigning for their separate presidential bids. Back in studio, we were discussing with Kipchumba Karori the importance of Kalonzo Musyoka on whether or not there could be any other person to be picked as a running mate for the top presidential candidates from Ukambani region, if not Kalonzo. Kipchumba?
I will say this, Fred, bearing in mind the time remaining and the kind of work needed to be done. 9 months to the general election is not so long a time. You need somebody who comes on board, brings, at least he has some appeal, because Kalonzo has some numbers. When he comes, he has vied for presidency, and we know what he has gotten. And he has demonstrated that ability. The people you are comparing Kalonzo with, we have one, Charity Ngilu, the other one, and Charity Ngilu at some point lost a seat. The other one is Alfred Mutua and Makueni governor.
We even have Johnston Muthama, the
we
chairman
also have
of
the
UDA.
UDA chairman,
Yes.
Johnston Muthama. Of all those, if you are putting together a winning ticket, I will go for Kalonzo Musyoka. The other aspect also that Kalonzo Musyoka as a person must realize going forward is that this might be his last chance at competitive politics, because and the more he takes long to make a decision, the more he loses. But at the end of the day, Fred, the person who loses the most is not Kalonzo Musyoka. The person who loses the most, even if he was to lose 10% of Ukambani, is Raila Odinga, because that has been his bastion for the last 2 electoral cycles.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, I will put my money with Kalonzo Musyoka.
Okay, now allow me to bring in into this conversation governance expert Hesbon Owila is joining us via way of Zoom. Good morning, Hesbon. Karibu sana to Inside Politics. We were discussing the scramble for Ukambani. Both Raila Odinga and William Ruto were in the region this past Friday. Thus just indicating the kind of importance this region is in as far as the next general elections is concerned. Whether or not the Kalonzo factor plays into this, what do you think?
Thank you, Fred. I think I've listened to my co-panelists, and I want to identify more with what Kipchumba has said, that there's something in politics called brand recognition and brand awareness. And I think that's the biggest asset that Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka has, that between now and the next general election, if there is any brand that is gonna help any presidential candidate from the Ukambani region, then it is the Kalonzo Musyoka brand. I mean, you'll burn the midnight oil trying to tell the people of Kuria in my native Migori County who Muthama is and what Muthama is bringing. You would struggle to use the names of Governor Kivutha Kibwana and Governor Alfred Mutua to rally people from different other backgrounds, telling them that Ukambani nation is locked. It would be a big struggle. But then I also agree with Wakili Nyaribo that Kalonzo's brand has also suffered some dents. And I think this has been occasioned by his, what we've also associated with him, the fact that he's come out as very indecisive. And to a large extent, you would say that that has dented his brand. And it doesn't really affect the person who brings Kalonzo on board, as it does affect what Kalonzo can then negotiate on. So it diminishes his negotiating power. And that is what makes Kalonzo's, bid to be a running mate a little bit difficult, because when it comes to the table, there is a sense in which the negotiation will be slightly below the position of a running mate, whether he goes with the deputy president or Raila Odinga. And he has also made it clear that he would be insane to support Raila for the 3rd time. And that basically tells you that if he was to support Raila, negotiations would revolve around him supporting, not as a running mate, because then having the same position twice is something that would be used against that ticket. But I think having said that, let me come back to, the brand Kalonzo. Dismas has talked about Raila invoked Kalonzo's name when he was in Makueni. And it is clear that Kalonzo is still the kingpin, and that's why his name was invoked. And all the other leaders who are around Raila, in as much as they portray a very good picture of Raila as a national leader, should realize that the invocation of Kalonzo's name in a rally where they were the key speakers basically should be a reminder to them that they are part of the support cast. That if they move together with Kalonzo, then Ukambani is likely to be a very significant determinant in the coming election. But if they all scatter, yes, then it's going to be slightly difficult.
Allow me to throw a spanner in the works and ask if at all Kalonzo Musyoka was to run separately from the two candidates and run for the presidency, probably under an Oka grouping, or even alone. Do you think it would affect the kind of numbers that these other candidates can get from Ukambani? Briefly, before we move to another discussion.
Well, I think what happens is if he decides to run alone, then he will actually make the other three Kamba leaders, you know, Governor Ngilu, Governor Mtua, and Governor Kibwana, a big sort of political cloud, because then they would seriously be struggling. They would seriously make a stab at giving a big chunk to Raila Odinga as a presidential candidate. And what they would have is to promise, to let the people of Ukambani know that you go with a Lone Ranger, because it is clear, if it is not between Raila and Ruto, the others are actually going to shoot themselves into oblivion if they try running on their own. And I can say without any fear of contradiction that Oka will break and disintegrate the moment they choose a presidential candidate, and that presidential candidate is not Musalia Mudavadi. I mean, we saw, you know, Musalia's lieutenants make a lot of noise in Kakamega, and essentially, they are telling Kenyans that this Oka thing is only tenable if Musalia is the presidential candidate. That's why they want the presidential candidate determined now. But let me say that irrespective of what happens, if Kalonzo does not end up with Raila Odinga, it would be a very big dent on Raila Odinga. I think the deputy president will not suffer major consequences if Kalonzo does not join him, because if anything, there is nothing he will lose. But if Kalonzo joins the deputy president or goes alone, I think the political consequence would be that people would imagine that Raila has lost a big chunk of what he had in 2013 and 2017. Yes. And it's incumbent upon Raila and his strategies to find a way of having Kalonzo Musyoka in their equation.
Wakili Nyaribo, of course, you said we shouldn't waste too much time talking about if at all he decided to run for presidency, whether under Oka or separately. Don't you think that that would have an effect on the kind of discussions we're having now?
Yes, it is true, but Fred, you know, every single debate must have an objective. I mean, I've just heard what my brother Willa is saying, and clearly he's saying that if Kalonzo goes alone, definitely will not make any impact in terms of becoming a president, but he will affect a huge chunk of votes that was meant for Raila Odinga. I mean, it will not majorly affect William Ruto. Any vote for William Ruto from Ukambani is a plus, but Raila, if he runs without Kalonzo, it's a big minus. If Kalonzo runs alone, he cannot win. So what are we interested in? Are we just going to say that some big gentlemen are mad at each other and they just want to showcase it, you know, to the public? So what I meant, Fred, is simple, that Kalonzo is extremely relevant if he is going to team up with the rest of his friends whom he has come up with to win elections in whichever way. Alone, I don't think he will make any impact. That's my position.
Dismas on this one very briefly before we move on.
Well, in my view, probability of Kalonzo Musyoka becoming president of the Republic of Kenya is fast approaching zero. But probability of Kalonzo Musyoka influencing who becomes the president of the Republic of Kenya is fast approaching 100%. Is a position on who is going to support for the next presidential elections will tilt the scales and it will move the needle. So anybody, if you come across anybody who wishes away Kalonzo Musyoka and says that Kalonzo Musyoka doesn't merit time for a conversation, then maybe they're driving a certain political agenda, or they've refused to have a global appreciation of who Kalonzo Musyoka is. And when you're in One Kenya Alliance and the people associated with Musalia Mudavadi say it must be Musalia Mudavadi, the ones who are associated with Kalonzo say it must be Kalonzo, others say it must be Gideon Moi, others say it must be Wetangula, that is the nature of politics, because everybody within Oka has got his support base, and the supporters, all of them want to raise the stakes. And you know, that's the art of negotiation. So you raise the stake, but at the end of the day, those are four principals will have a cup of tea and take a decision whether they're going to field one of their own, whether they're going to support Raila, or whether they're going to support Ruto. So as we keep on saying times are above number, anybody in Kenya who can persuade somebody to vote, whether it's 1 vote, 10,000 votes, and 1,000 votes, is very consequential, because to be president of the Republic of Kenya is 50% plus 1. That plus 1 can be a nightmare.
Gentlemen, allow me to move away from Ukambani, and it would be unfair if we don't mention the fact that Deputy President William Ruto was also in Nyanza this past week, in Kisumu to be precise, and also in Migori. That, of course, is one of those main discussions. There were cases of violence reported, but even without focusing much on the violence, the fact that the Deputy President spent time in Kisumu and other areas of